We, the citizens of America, are now joined in a great national effort to rebuild our country and restore its promise for all of our people. Because today, we are not merely transferring power from one administration to another or from one party to another, but we are transferring power from Washington, D.C., and giving it back to you, the people.
Well, welcome to the We the People Convention news and opinion radio broadcast and podcast. My name is Tom Zawistowski. I am the host of the show, but I'm also the president of the We the People Convention. And the We the People Convention is a grassroots organization that was started here in Ohio, but now works across the United States. And what we do is we work to protect the individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity of American citizens. And we do that in a couple of ways. The first thing is that, we really try to educate our fellow citizens because there's so much fake news. It's hard to figure out what's really going on. And a lot of people have just given up because it's just so hard to get to the truth. This program is a news summary show. So what I do is we look at all the news that's happened in the last week. We kind of filter out all the nonsense, and we try to focus on the news that actually affects you, the listeners to the show, the watchers of this podcast. And then we not only give you that news, but we take action. So, we have a saying in our emails, it's not just talk, but action. We are about helping to make sure our lives are better, are more prosperous. And we do that, by working to elect people that will represent us. And the person that we most work to re-elect is going to be President Donald Trump this year. We are affiliated with the NRA-ILA, the National Rifle Association's action group. We were affiliated with them in 2016. The people in Ohio who listen to this show, the We the People Convention, members and members of Tea Party and Liberty groups and 912 groups across Ohio, we made 1.5 million phone calls in 2016. We knocked on hundreds of thousands of doors. We put out thousands of signs. We did bridge sign waves. We worked hard to elect President Trump, and we're going to work even harder this year. So this show has two purposes. First, just to talk to the general public and try to give you some information that you aren't getting and to bring some clarity to some of the things that are happening out there that are confusing. And then the second thing is it's actually a way for us to give information to our activists that they can actually take action on. So for instance, as you listen to the show week to week going forward, we'll actually be saying, okay, there's going to be a phone bank in Toledo on these dates. We need 25 people to go there and make phone calls. We're going to be going door to door in North Dayton, in this community at this time. We need people to go there. So you should be listening to this show if you really want to take action. If you're a person, that doesn't just want to understand what's going on, but wants to play a part in defending your own personal freedom and liberty and prosperity. Because folks, this is it. This year is it. You can see by what's going on in Washington. You can see by what's going on in the Democratic, primary for president. The left is taking over the Democratic Party. If you're a Democrat, if you were a lifelong Democrat, your party doesn't exist anymore. It's gone, okay? It's now been taken over by the communists. And if you go to wethepeopleconvention.org and watch the two videos that Project Veritas, undercover videos that they've published that interview Bernie Sanders' paid employees, you will see they are full-fledged Marxists. And they want to take over all production in the United States. They want to get rid of the House and the Senate. They want to make Bernie Sanders the dictator. Don't believe me? Go to wethepeopleconvention.org, check in the video section. You'll see the Project Veritas videos. We the People Convention takes some of your donations, and we actually help support Project Veritas because we think the work they're doing is priceless. It's so valuable to us. So that's what this show is about. And we're glad that you're tuned in. We are on a 5-station radio network across Ohio. So welcome to everyone who's listening on Saturday mornings to the radio program. And our podcast is seen all across the country as well as in Ohio. And you can get that right on the front page of the WeThePeopleConvention.org website. Say it out loud. wethepeopleconvention.org. It's easy to remember. And if you go there, you can also just sign up for our newsletter, meaning give us your email address, and you'll start to get the information we send out, which is pretty serious information that'll really help you. So we thank you for tuning into the show, whether it's on the radio or in the podcast. And now we want to get started with the program, and we'll talk about some things that are important. First thing I just want to say is, how about the crowd that President Trump drew in New Jersey in the middle of all this impeachment nonsense? What an amazing crowd. Let me just play a clip for you from a New Jersey TV station that was doing drone footage of the crowd there.
Massive crowd already outside waiting to get into the venue to see President Trump later today. You are watching right here on News and Now. Now, obviously, there will be an overflow crowd. Why? Because 100,000 tickets were requested. They can only fill about 20,000, maybe 25 if they're lucky here. But you're taking a live look at these aerials right now, and this is impressive. Say it again, in New Jersey as well, to draw that crowd. A huge Republican base showing out in New Jersey. I mean, look at it. They are all over the streets and everything. This is going to be a major Keep America Great rally tonight.
So listen to his voice, right? You could tell just how shocked they were. Like, this is in Wildwood, New Jersey, and this is media that is seen in New York City, where the communists under De Blasio are so thick, and here they are seeing a crowd that every Democratic presidential candidate combined couldn't draw. And this is in the middle. This is happening right when the Democrats are trying to do this phony impeachment of President Trump. It's really stunning. And I think you just need to keep track of that and understand that what's really going on. Not what they're telling you on the news, even on Fox News. Yeah, okay. And when we don't talk much about the impeachment because it's a joke, it's just political theater. And I will predict this right now, that by the time you watch this show or hear this show, President Trump will have been, basically, this trial will be ended, and he will be, declared not guilty by the Senate for one simple reason, folks. Just do the math. There's 34 Senate seats, U.S. Senate seats up this year. This November. Of those, 25 are Republican seats. That's almost half of the 51 Republican U.S. senators. You think those people have a chance in heck of being reelected if they actually voted to throw President Trump out of office on these bogus, trumped up, charges that, Shifty Schiff and Nadler and those people have come up with? Now, they're not voting because they support Donald Trump. Matter of fact, this thing has gone on too long because the Republicans haven't stopped it, because a lot of them are never Trumpers. A lot of them are deep staters themselves, and they want to beat up President Trump. But let's just be sure you all understand one thing. They will always protect themselves first. So they're going to get President Trump and declare him innocent simply because they want to get reelected, and they won't if they vote him out. So I predict that by the time you're watching this or hearing this on the radio, he's already going to be declared innocent, and the whole, impeachment fiasco will be a total disgrace for the Democrats. All right, let's move on to some other things. What we like to do in this show is we like to keep track of stories that we've done week by week, so we don't just tell you a story and then forget about it. So last week, I made some comments about the this coronavirus case that this virus is going around the world. It's got stock markets a little bit nervous and things like that. The update for you here in Ohio is the Ohio Department of Health is investigating 2 possible cases of coronavirus in southern Ohio. The cases involved 2 Miami University students, and the source says that these students became involved with someone who traveled recently to China. Authorities are still awaiting test results, and U.S. health officials are monitoring 110 possible cases in 26 states across the country. This virus has been tracked back to a market in a Chinese city of Wuhan, where the virus is believed to have jumped from animals to humans. Since then, the disease has killed over 106 people in China and sickened more than 4,500 people worldwide, according to the New York Times. However, the CDC says the virus, which has pneumonia-like symptoms, is not spreading within the United States, and the risk to the public is low. So, right here in Ohio, Miami University, down in the southwest part of the state, people listen on WCVX from, Florence, Kentucky, on 1190 AM. That's in your neck of the woods. But it doesn't look like this is spreading in the U.S. They've quarantined it. But you just need to be aware. If there's people that at your work who come from China, they could, have the virus. If you have students, there was a case at Miami where the students are involved. People that are traveling. It's not clear how this is going to play out, but it is something you need to be aware of and you need to protect your children with. And I actually talked to a couple this week that was going to go on a cruise, and they decided not to go because they were concerned that there might be some Chinese citizens on the boat, and you'd be in a tough situation there. So just take care. Just know what's going on. This is something that affects you. That's why we're reporting on it. Okay. Now, last week, another thing that we talked about was that the president, keeps, despite all this, impeachment and all this resistance and all the leaks in Washington, he keeps on doing things that help us. And unfortunately, a lot of things he does just don't get reported on. Last week, we talked about his act to bring praying back into schools. All right. I mean, and that got like no coverage at all. So we talked about it. So this week, I want to talk to you about this change that the president made in what's called the WOTUS, the Waters of the United States Act, which President Obama put in. And President Trump took action just like last Friday, going into this week, to change that. And it's going to benefit, all kinds of Americans. So we reached out to our friends at the Heartland Institute in Indiana, who are kind of experts on this. And I did an interview with one of their people to kind of give you the real story about what this whole change in this, the federal regulations for waterways and what it means to you. So let's listen to that interview now. All right, we're very pleased to have with us from the Heartland Institute, which is in Illinois, Anthony Watts, who is a senior fellow for environment and climate, who has really been studying the whole issue of climate. He's got a great blog called What's Up With That? If you want to learn about the climate and get the truth about climate, what's up with that? But he's coming on today to talk with us about this change that President Trump and the EPA under President Trump just made last week that we think is going to be very important to all, farmers and business owners and even individual, landowners in America, because it replaces Trump's new thing is called Navigable Waters Protection Rule, and it replaces the Waters of the United States rule that President Obama had put in under the Clean Water Act. And I know those are a lot of initials and a lot of names, but we want to, really want to have Anthony explain to our listeners and our viewers on our podcast, what does this change mean to the common person? Anthony, can put it in, personal terms.
Well, in personal terms, it means freedom to use your land the way that you intended to. Mm-hmm. I guess that's the simplest way to describe it. The Waters of the U.S. rule has been abused by the EPA, horribly so. We actually have here in California, not too far from me in the town of Red Bluff, an example of such abuse. There's a fellow by the name of Duarte in Red Bluff who bought a field, who he intended to plant wheat there. And he was, this was in Tehama County near Red Bluff, and he basically went through all the process to make sure everything was permitted, everything was right. He went through all of his government agencies to make sure he did everything by the book. He made one fatal mistake. He didn't contact the Army Corps of Engineers, which was responsible for enforcing these Waters of the United States rule.
Okay.
And so it's a field. It's got some puddles in it. And these puddles basically fell into, or sometimes they call them vernal pools, because they happen in the summer and some bugs and some weeds grow in it, and then they dry up. right? Oh my God, we're hurting the bugs and weeds. So that's basically what happened. They came back and said, well, you haven't got the right to do this, and so forth and so on, and you're damaging the environment. And so he got fined $2.8 million for plowing the field he owned, which he had other permits for.
Wow.
This just unbelievable abuse of bureaucracy. So getting rid of this rule is the best thing that can happen to anyone who has land anywhere in the United States who intends to use it for anything other than just looking at it.
Right. So, as I understand it, before President Obama, did the Waters of the U.S. rule, the lands that you're talking about, this field, which we have lots of them here in Ohio, that have some water during the spring and it dries out and all that. Well, those were really the state EPA and local, government would have some regulation ability on those, but those weren't federal lands, and they sure weren't navigable waters by any stretch of the imagination. So what Obama did,
I suppose if you had a little paper boat, you could navigate a couple.
So what Obama really did is he federalized every piece of water in the United States.
Yeah, it basically was a land grab, control of land, for the sake of the environment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, so I was reading about this, and I was reading about the Heartland Institute's comments where they were saying this is really an important thing to help business and to help farmers to be more prosperous. And of course, the left came back, and their argument, Anthony, which I think you can help us rebut, is that they're saying, well, if you don't have the federal government regulating every drop of water, as far as it goes back to the smallest stream, then you really can't keep the big waterways like the Mississippi and the Missouri and the Ohio River clean, because that's where it all starts. But that's really not true, is it?
No, and in fact, there's been tremendous gains in water pollution since the EPA was formed in the early 70s by a Republican, by the way, Nixon. Uh-huh. And, basically what's happened is these people have solved lots of problems, and they were real problems. Los Angeles smog, polluted waterways, Lake Erie caught on fire.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, right here.
They've solved these problems. Our waters are cleaner, our air is cleaner. But now we've got this monster bureaucracy with nothing left to do, and so they have to invent things, and that's what this was all about.
Right, and so what Trump is doing is what he's been doing really across the board, cutting regulations that are really unnecessary, that aren't really achieving any goal, and freeing up business and industry and individuals to basically maximize the resources that they have available to them.
That's pretty much true. And, we've got micromanagement going on by the government at all kinds of different levels, in the air and in the water, in insulation for your home. Here in California now, they're talking about limiting the amount of water you can use on a daily basis to 55 gallons.
Wow.
Now, imagine trying to wash your clothes and take a shower on the same day and stick within 55 gallons.
Wow, that's crazy. That's just crazy. But
right.
You're right. But see, this is a liberty issue, right? And this is really what we talk about on our podcast and on our show is, the government is intruding upon our rights, and they're not really managing it better, Anthony. They're making it worse. In California, their lack of management of the forests is the reason we're having these fires. Their lack of management of the water they have is what the reason why you don't have water. Isn't that the truth?
Well, in California, Congressman Doug LaMalfa has pointed out time and again that the Camp Fire and other major fires recently in California were increased in their size, acreage, and intensity by the lack of forest management. I mean, there's just been no ability to clean out underbrush, to thin any of these forests, and do it properly. I mean, anytime someone would try to do that, there would be environmental lawsuits thrown up. Yeah. And basically, with this Waters of the U.S. thing, and other things they're trying to do, like limit to 55 gallons, it's basically preventing life, liberty, and the pursuit of cleanliness.
That's exactly right. And we want to be clean. And again, they can accuse us of, you don't want clean water and you don't want clean air. Yeah, we do. We have to breathe that air. We have to drink that water. And the thing that they never talk about, Anthony, is that no country on the planet is making more progress with cleaning up the air and the water than the United States, correct?
Of course. And you will never see these eco-protesters over in China or India.
Yeah.
Because if they were, they'd get thrown in the clink.
That's exactly right. Well, Anthony Watts, I greatly appreciate you coming on and talking to our listeners and explaining why this new rule change is important. And listen, we appreciate the Heartland Institute. There's groups like that really help us keep our focus on what's the truth and to get rid of all the propaganda. And just, we thank you for being here. The Heartland Institute is like the Buckeye Institute here in Ohio. And I don't know what we'd do without you. Thank you for your good work.
Thank you very much.
All right. Have a good day.
It's our honor to help the United States of America.
All right. Thanks, Anthony. Have a good day. So I hope you enjoyed that report on what the president's action was to get the EPA off your land and out of your life. And we're going to take a short break. My name is Tom Zawistowski, and you're listening to the We the People Convention News and Opinion radio show and podcast.
As Merrick, president of Liberty Camp for Kids in Portage County, Ohio. Liberty Camp for Kids is where students in grades 1 through 6 experience the founding of our nation. This year's camp will be held from July 20th through the 24th from 9 till noon. The cost is $30 per camper. If you're interested in our camp, being a volunteer, or even starting one of your own, go to www.libertycampforkids.com.
Buckeye Firearms Association is Ohio's #1 gun rights organization, protecting the rights of Ohio's 4 million gun owners. And you can get our weekly gun rights newsletter free. Receive breaking news and urgent alerts on gun laws. Stay up to date on self-defense and shooting sports. Discover pro-gun activities and events near you. Get your free gun rights newsletter now at bfanews.org. That's bfanews.org. bfanews.org.
All right, and we're back, and we thank our sponsors, and we hope you will support them. I want to move on to a story that we've been covering a lot. If you've been watching the show in the past couple weeks, we got involved in this issue with Governor DeWine agreeing to bring refugees to Ohio. And, as we've been investigating this, we haven't liked what we've been seeing. Well, this week, this whole thing took a different twist as Ohio Republican Party Chairwoman Jane Timken sent out an email trying to defend Governor DeWine that really has just blown up in her face. And let me talk about that now. The Ohio Star reported that, on this email that Chairwoman Timken sent out, and just fact-checked her. And basically, here's what the story says. Ohio Republican Party Chairwoman Jane Timken wrote an error-riddled apologetic letter by email on Thursday to party members defending Governor Mike DeWine's refugee resettlement policy. It is highly unusual for the chairman of the state Republican Party to defend the politically unpopular decision of a state governor. In most cases and in most states, the chairman of the party is focused on building the party organization by raising money and focused on getting out the vote at precinct level. But in Ohio, apparently the Republican Party chairwoman defines her primary objective as protecting the left flank of the sitting governor from grassroots opposition among the conservative base. At the policy level, Timken's defense was flat out wrong in a number of ways. Timken said falsely, accusations that the federal government is letting dangerous individuals into the country through poor vetting are no longer accurate. Truth, says the Ohio Star, has reported that Governor Mike DeWine's decision to say yes to more refugees in Ohio would allow the federal government to resettle them from any country, including from an estimated 300 to 720 refugees from the Middle East that the government of Australia has refused to accept. Press reports indicate that these refugees came from Sudan, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iran, and Iraq, hardly countries that we would consider safe. Timken also made the misleading statement, much of the direct cost to help resettlement of refugees is paid by faith-based groups such as Catholic charities who do the resettlement work as well as federal programs. Well, we reported just last week that the Catholic charities is making $2 billion a year from taxpayer money, from our money. Instead of Catholic charities raising money from Catholics, in church collections to help these Christian refugees, they're acting as agents of the U.S. federal government, and you and I, the taxpayers, are paying the Catholic Church and the Episcopal Church and Jewish charities and Lutheran charities, all these people, billions of dollars to bring in these refugees. So Jane Timken was completely wrong on that statement. Timken also falsely stated an example of someone who would be able to seek refugee status would be a Christian in China who's being persecuted by the Chinese government for her religious beliefs. The truth is, the U.S. State Department's Refugee Processing Center proves otherwise. Out of approximately 240,000 refugees resettled in the United States under the Refugee Admission Program in 5+ fiscal years starting in 2015, only 118 out of 240,000 were from China, and only 7 of them were Christians, and only 1 of them came to Ohio. So, the bottom line is that we don't want this. I've heard enough. You have heard enough. And as I said at the beginning of the show, if you're a follower, if you're a member, and you should join the We the People convention. And by the way, you can do that right now. If you just take out your cell phone, you can text the word freedom to 22525. You open up your texting thing and address it to 22525, type the word freedom, and you'll be able to give $5 per month to the We the People convention so that we can help continue these programs and keep fighting for liberty and freedom. Okay? But the bottom line is we take action, and I need you to take action right now. So this week, I want you to call Governor Mike DeWine's office at 614-644-4357. 614-644-4357 and say, Governor DeWine, we don't want refugees. We don't want these people in our state. Not because we're against immigration. We are the sons and daughters of immigrants. We want legal immigration, and we want merit-based immigration. And we want the borders locked down, and we want to stop this nonsense because we're just not getting the transparency. From what we understand, these 1,400 refugees that have been brought to Ohio are going to cost the taxpayers of Ohio $141 million. And the question is, what are we doing that for? And the answer is, we don't want to do it anymore. Call the governor's office, 614-644-4357, and tell them you haven't made your case. This really isn't what we want in Ohio. Another thing that we don't want in Ohio, and an evidence that making phone calls like I just asked you to do can work. So for the people around the country who are listening to this podcast, just bear with me, because in Ohio, we had a situation where the Civil Justice Committee of the Ohio House is trying to pass one of these SOGI laws, okay? And these SOGI laws, are the sexual orientation gender identity bills that are being pushed by the communist left, not to help transgenders, not to help gay people, but to undermine our society. And so we put out the word through our email system to call the people on that Civil Justice Committee and tell them we don't want this to happen. We don't want this, we don't want them to pass any kind of law that gives superior rights to people instead of equal rights, right? This is what this is all about. And so there was a case where, we made the phone calls, the meeting was canceled. Now we got an email back from some of the people that wrote to the Chairman Steve Hambley from Medina County, and he wrote back, contrary to what has been reported in social media posts and email blasts, this bill is not on the fast track. There are no scheduled amendments or votes in the near future. That's what we want to hear. There should never be a vote on this in Ohio. We shouldn't even have a committee called the Civil Justice Committee. That's against the very Constitution of Ohio and the Constitution of the United States, which is there to protect individuals, not groups. And the fact of the matter is that there's only 0.2%, that's 0.2% of people in this country have gender dysphoria, which is what transgenderism is. It is a mental illness, folks. It's a mental illness. And the left is trying to get us to do something incredibly stupid, and that is to give legal protection to something that isn't even real. What do I mean by that? Law has to be based on fact. It has to be objective. You're either a veteran or you're not. Provide your VA records, right? If you're black, you can tell. It's verifiable. This transgender nonsense is a mental illness, and it's totally subjective. Totally subjective. And so you can't make law on something that, well, right now I'm a guy. Oh, tomorrow I'm a girl. And if you're a businessman and you're trying to have employees like that, and someone doesn't get a promotion, all they have to do is say, well, you didn't give it to me because I'm transgender and you're a bigot. Well, how do you prove they're a transgender or not? The answer is you can't. So you can't make it law. And so we were really excited this week to learn that the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals rejected the use of transgender pronouns, okay? Because this is how they're doing it. This is what they're doing to us. Earlier this month in U.S. versus Varner, a divided panel of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit boldly refused to appease those who would muddle the truth over the dissent of Clinton-nominated judge who used female pronouns in his opinion to refer to a biologically male defendant. The majority refused to subordinate the integrity of the judiciary to a litigant who has moved to require the court to address him as something other than what plain English would indicate he is. In doing so, the Fifth Circuit panel has provided a roadmap for how public officials interested in preserving the commonality and vitality of the English language can resist contemporary progressivism's attempt to obfuscate the truth through the propagation of biologically inaccurate and linguistically imprecise transgender pronouns. Trump-nominated Judge Kyle Duncan first observed that no authority supports the proposition that we may require litigants, judges, court personnel, or anyone else to refer to a gender dysphoric litigant with pronouns matching their subjective gender identity. You can read that article and that whole story at wethepeopleconvention.org. Just look under the articles for the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals story. But this is how we stand up and fight back, because this is utter nonsense. Nonsense. And it should never be put under law, because law is about fact, and this is about fantasy. We're going to take another break. We'll be back. You're listening to the We the People Convention News and Opinion radio show and podcast, and I'm Tom Zawistowski. You can view the We the People Convention News and Opinion podcast anytime you want, 24/7, 365 days per year, by just going to wethepeopleconvention.org. And then right on the front page, you'll see the podcast player. And if you click on the blue playlist, it'll show you all of our most recent podcasts. You can also find out by clicking on the yellow button on the front page and going to the We the People live podcast page of the website, how you can listen to the broadcast on Facebook or YouTube, on Roku TV or Amazon Fire TV, and get a complete list of our stations that broadcast our podcasts on the radio every Saturday morning, including a map with the Ohio stations indicated. So be sure to tune in when it's convenient for you. And if you have comments about the show, don't hesitate to write to us at info@wethepeopleconvention.org and tell us what you think about the show or what topics you'd like us to cover. All right, so we're getting towards the end of the show. I want to just do one more story because I just think it's such a great story, and that was the march, the Life March last Saturday in Washington, D.C. that President Trump spoke at. That was such a huge turnout. What I want to point out to you is that it says the U.S. Park Service estimated that 450 to 500,000 people participated in the March for Life event here in January of 2020. That is a huge number, and that's the largest crowd that's been seen in years. And I want to contrast that with the Women's March, right? This Women's March, remember they did the big Women's March right after Trump was elected, and all these angry women came, and there were a bunch of communists in there and people that were later caused embarrassment. You know how many people were at the Women's March in D.C. this year? Yeah, 10,000. 10,000. There were 100,000 the year before. There were 10,000 this year. This shows you, folks, that we're winning. And we win by taking action. Not by talking, but by taking action. And lots of people, thousands of people from Ohio went to the March for Life. And they stood up for life. And that's what you have to do if you want to win. So, all right. So now we got to wrap up the show. I want to thank everybody. I was in Xenia, Ohio, for a meeting this past Tuesday. Had a great reception there. Want to say thanks to all the good folks down there in Xenia. If you want me to come speak at your event in your community, just send me an email at info@wethepeopleconvention.org. I'll be happy to do that. I keep telling you this, and I'm going to keep telling you this until you're blue in the face. We need equal justice under the law. The most critical thing that you, the people listening to this broadcast and this podcast, need to know is that we need equal justice under the law. And the only way we're going to get it is if AG Bill Barr prosecutes the coup criminals, the people who tried to rig the 2016 election and then have tried to overthrow this president, including this phony impeachment, which the deep state people have leaked that information about the Ukrainian call. I need you to call AG Bill Barr at 202-353-1555. That's 202-353-1555. And I need you to do it every day. Every day, I want you to call him and say, we the people support you, AG Barr, and we support John Durham in your investigation of these criminals. And we demand equal justice under the law. And you do that until those indictments come down, which you're telling us is going to be late spring, early summer. We got to push for that to happen sooner because I don't think that's good enough. So we're going to do what we do in this show is we're going to, now end the radio broadcast and continue the podcast. That'll go on for like another half an hour. We've got some great stories to talk about. Ohio passed a free speech law for its colleges and universities. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the drug overdoses have finally started to decline in our country, and that has resulted in a longer life expectancy in our country, so that's good. We're going to talk about a follow-up to the DOJ case against General Mike Flynn. There's some big developments there. We're going to talk about the Trump administration stopping birth tourism. Very interesting story. And we're going to talk about a Harvard scientist that the FBI arrested who was working with China. All kinds of important stories, including President Trump's, Middle East peace plan. Bet you haven't even heard about that. So when the radio program's over, go to wethepeopleconvention.org and pick up the podcast, and you'll hear all those stories and more. We sure appreciate you being with us, on the radio and listening to our show. And we hope you'll be back next week. And we hope you will please tell people about this show so that we can organize and make sure that we reelect Donald Trump in this year, in 2020. Thanks for listening. The We the People Convention News and Opinion radio program is paid for by donors like you. You can donate to the We the People Convention and support our cause by going to wethepeopleconvention.org or by sending your check in any amount to We the People Convention, P.O. Box 6211, Akron, Ohio 44312. All right, and we're back and we're continuing our podcast, and we're sure glad you're with us. We hope you've enjoyed the first part of the show, and I think you'll enjoy the stories we've got in the second part of the show. As I said when we were signing off on our radio broadcast, there's some good news that our Ohio Senate has passed a bill that protects free speech on our campuses here in Ohio. And The Ohio Senate unanimously passed a bill Tuesday that strengthens free speech protection on college and university campuses in the Buckeye State. The Forming Open and Robust University Minds Act, you got to love how they bend the pretzel to name these things, would prohibit administrators at state institutions from acting or enforcing any policy that limits or restricts the constitutional right of a member of the campus community to engage in non-commercial free speech. The bill, introduced by State Senators Rob McCauley from Napoleon, Ohio, and Andrew Brenner from Napoleon also, seeks to eliminate free speech zones on college campuses, prohibit using the heckler's veto to shut down events, protect peaceable assembly, require schools to have a free speech policy, and to report free speech violations to the state legislature. Now, that's going to have to be passed by the House. Okay, so, it's the Senate passed it unanimously. The Republicans control the House. I can't imagine they wouldn't pass this, and I can't imagine that Governor DeWine wouldn't, pass it. But you never know. But it's a step in the right direction. Again, not just talk, but action. We complain about these, the communist left on our campuses trying to take away free speech. And this is how you fight back. You put laws on them, and then you fine them and you stop them from doing it. So again, hats off to the legislature for acting on that. It's long overdue, and we really appreciate that. As I mentioned, we are very happy to report that drug overdoses have dropped in the United States. Not a ton, slightly, but it's the first time in 3 decades. So that's good news. Thursday, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention announced that overdose deaths fell from 70,237 in 2017 to 67,367 in 2018. That's a 4.1% decline, in overdose deaths. And, that may sound like it's not significant, but when this thing was trending, in the wrong direction for years after years, we were trying to stop this. Okay. And so, my question, and I would have to look deeper at this story, is that because less people are taking the drugs, or quite frankly, the police departments and fire departments have that drug that they can inject in you. If you die from taking fentanyl, they can revive you. And maybe we're just getting better at reviving the people. We got a long way to go before we can ebb this horrible, drug problem we've got. But I'll tell you, President Trump's actions on the border are really going to help with that, folks. There's going to be long-term benefits to building that border wall, and then, really cracking down on these people that are, these drug cartels who have been just really running across our borders like it's nothing for years. We've got to get that done. But here's a side note, though, that's kind of interesting, is that just that decline in overdose deaths has changed the life expectancy in the United States. The U.S. life expectancy in 2018 was 78.7 years. That's an increase of about 1 month compared to life expectancy of 78.6 years in 2017. So our life expectancy in the U.S., here we are with all this great health care, has been going down. We've been dying younger. There's no reason for that except for suicides and drug overdoses. And those are 2 big problems that we've got to take on. And there is some progress being made on both ends. But that's really good news that, finally it started to trend in the other direction. And we'll look forward to see how 2019 went. My guess is going to be that it went better, that 19, it continued to go in the right direction. Now, a story that, you've heard me talk about because I have a personal connection with General Mike Flynn. I've talked to him many times. I've met him in person. We've tried to raise money for him. And this guy is a 3-star general, an American hero, gave his life to our country, has been treated so poorly by the coup criminals in the FBI and the DOJ. It's just outrageous. And so I'm happy to report that the Department of Justice has dropped its demand for former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn to serve time under his plea agreement. Flynn was attempting to withdraw his plea after the Justice Department set out what was an overtly vindictive campaign against him in court. The Flynn case remains a troubling matter for those who have followed the Russia investigation. He pleaded guilty to a false statement that seems relatively minor in comparison to the false statements made by justice officials like Andrew McCabe or leaks by figures like James Comey. Only a few weeks ago, the Justice Department was demanding up to 6 weeks of jail time. Some of us has questioned the case for years. Prosecutors threatened to go after Flynn's son and to bankrupt him if he continued to assert his innocence. I heard last night that Sarah Carter is reporting that General Flynn's his defense team has now uncovered evidence, actual evidence of the people who were investigating Flynn setting him up for this. And so they're going to withdraw their plea. General Flynn himself made a statement. I withdraw my guilty plea. I did so under coercion. Okay. They were threatening my family. They were threatening to bankrupt me. And now we see that they were withholding evidence and they were making up evidence. And I think this is going to work out okay for General Flynn. But here's the problem. You've destroyed the guy's life for 3 years. I mean, even if he's found innocent, the people that went after him, McCabe and Strzok and Page and Comey, those guys need to go to prison. And B, We, the people of the United States, need to make him whole. We spent $35 million on the phony Mueller report. We need to pay General Flynn back. He had to sell his house to stay out of prison on fake charges. We're not a banana republic. We're a country that believes in equal justice under the law. We believe in justice, and we need to make him whole. And I'm going to be talking about that until he is made whole. All right, next story, really important story, a good story. On January 21st, the Trump administration announced it would be cracking down on the practice of birth tourism, right? A lot of you are saying, what the heck is birth tourism? A newly published rule directs embassy employees at the State Department to deny tourist visas to pregnant women who have no legitimate reason for visiting the United States other than to give birth. Birth tourism is a booming underground industry in the United States due to our current interpretation of birthright citizenship. And that interpretation is, if you're born in the United States, you're an American citizen. We got to get rid of that, okay? And Trump's trying to get rid of that. Federal agents arrested 3 people last year in California for operating, get this, a multi-million-dollar birth tourism business. These businesses draw foreign nationals to the United States in order to procure U.S. citizenship for their unborn children. Citizens' children can sponsor their parents for a green card when they turn 21. Research indicates that over 33,000 tourist births occur every year in the United States. Think about that. So President Trump, again, man, they're attacking him. They're impeaching him. He's stopping these kind of crazy things. And it's all it takes is caring enough to stop it. And so these people fly from all over the world, say, oh, I'm coming to visit the Grand Canyon, except they're 9 months pregnant or 8 months pregnant, and then they have the baby while they're here, and now their baby's an American citizen, and when they're 21, they can bring the whole family in. Wow. You just got to wonder, what the heck are we thinking? It's just amazing. I'm going to take another short break to hear from some of the groups that we support and who support us. You're listening to the We the People Convention News and Opinion podcast and radio broadcast, and my name is Tom Zawistowski.
This is Jordan Seculo with the American Center for Law and Justice. At the ACLJ, we are committed to fighting the deep state and protecting freedom, the right to life, religious liberty, and fighting for the Constitution. The ACLJ has experienced tremendous success in litigating cases at all levels of the judiciary, from the federal district court level to the Supreme Court of the United States. We have offices in Washington, D.C., Jerusalem, and all around the world. You can find out more about the ACLJ and join us by visiting aclj.org.
Did you know that the Right to Life Action Coalition of Ohio is the largest statewide life group in the state? Are you tired of the compromised approach to pro-life legislation that has been the status quo for far too long? Since 2017, the efforts of the Right to Life Action Coalition of Ohio has changed that approach, closing loopholes and making pro-life laws enforceable. Visit rtlaohio.org or call 440-668-4049 for details. The Right to Life Action Coalition of Ohio.
All right, we're back, and I appreciate those people that we support, and we support them. I hope you will visit their websites and really help keep those organizations strong, because they're all part of our coalition. That's what we are, a coalition. And the We the People Convention, we are the grassroots army that supports a lot of these groups. So that's why we have them on our show, and we're glad to have them on our show. Many of you have heard me speak before, and I'm going to keep beating this drum, just like I keep beating the called AG Bill Barr drum, and I'm going to keep doing it until we get it done. But in Ohio, there are 9 million people who are eligible to vote, 9 million over 18 people. Only 7.2 million of them are registered to vote. Now, the left is registering people all over the country. They're trying to register 40 million new Democratic voters all over the country. We've got to do our part and make sure we get all the adults in our state who aren't registered to register to vote. And the best news is you can now do that by going online. You can actually put this, the website on your phone. And if you're at a ball game or you're at church or you're just having people over for coffee or whatever, and someone, you're talking to, you say, hey, are you registered, Mike or Betty, to vote? And they say, no, I moved here from Indiana, or I came here from, Tennessee, and I just never did it. You can say, hey, we can do it right now. Let me open my app. You can take 5 minutes to do this on your phone. So this is how you do it. This is how you can register to vote in Ohio just by your phone or on the internet. And again, it's not online voting, and you don't have to worry that this is going to cause all kinds of illegal voters. Once they fill this out, they get paperwork, okay, that will help, that will confirm who they are, but they can vote. But this is just a really easy system, and this is how it works. To register to vote in Ohio, you go to the Secretary of State's website, which is sos.state.ohio.us. And you can navigate through that website, but the place where you can register online is olvr.ohiosos.gov. OLVR stands for Online Voter Registration.ohiosos.gov is the website. And so for the first time, you can actually register online with an Ohio driver's license, your name, your date of birth, your address, and the last 4 digits of your social security number. And it's really an easy process. And you need to start asking people in your community to just go to olvr.ohiosos.gov and sign up. That's the bottom line. It's right online, and if you put that on your phone, you will be able to tell people that they can register as soon as you find out. You'll be in a restaurant, you can be at church, you can be at a sporting event, and you can say, hey, Bill or Jane, are you registered to vote? And if they say, no, I'm not, maybe they lived in another state and they moved here and they just never decided to register, but you can register them right online, and that's what we need to do because that's what the Democrats are doing. Okay, and we're back, and I forgot to tell you that of those 1.8 million people in Ohio who are not registered to vote, most of them are in rural counties. They're not in the cities. So, I need you guys out there, in these rural counties to just talk to your friends and the people you meet and say, okay, if you're not registered to vote, let's get it done now. Because we need those people, because the Democrats are registering those people, and we've got to get our people ready to vote in this election, because they're coming at us with everything they got, and we're going to need every vote we can get. And part of that is getting the votes that currently they can't vote because they're not registered. So use that, that website and go and register them to vote. Okay, we're going to move on to a couple other stories before we wrap up the show. This is an important story. On Tuesday, January 28th, the New York Times reported that FBI agents arrested Charles M. Lieber, the chief of Harvard's Department of Chemistry and Chemical Biology, for making a false statement to federal authorities about his financial connections to the Chinese government and his involvement in the Thousand Talents program, a campaign used to draw foreign-educated scientists to China. The arrest marked a new phase where the Justice Department is ramping up its campaign to smoke out scientists who steal research from American laboratories. In the past few months, news about scientists being prosecuted, above all Chinese graduate students and researchers working in American laboratories, has been on the uptick. The Lieber arrest does mark a significant turn of events, however, since he is a renowned researcher that has moved into the highest echelons of his academic field. Lieber is a leader in the area of nanoscale electronics. His arrest surprised many individuals in research circles. This is a very, very highly esteemed, highly regarded investigator working at Harvard, a major U.S. institution, at the highest rank he could have. So all the success you can have in that sphere, declared Dr. Robert McKinney Jr., Chief Scientific Officer at the Association of American Medical Colleges. It's like, when you've got it all, what more do you want? Okay? And so this guy, listen to this. According to court documents, Dr. Lieber signed an agreement in 2011 to become a strategic scientist at Wuhan University of Technology in China, which came with a $50,000 a month salary and $150,000 in annual living expenses and more than $1.5 million allocated for a secondary laboratory in Wuhan. Now, folks, he makes good money at Harvard. I'll bet this guy's making $1 million a year at Harvard. But that's not enough. This creep is going to give technology to the communist Chinese who want to destroy America. And what do you get? So it's $50,000 a month times 12 months is $600,000 a year, plus $150,000 on top of that. So that's $750,000 a year for like 10 years. That's $7.5 million this traitor, this creep, took to betray our country. And I am so glad that the FBI is acting to take these people and arrest them, because we've let this go for too long. Under the Bush administration and the Obama administration, people like Mueller, when he was the FBI director, and Brennan and Clapper in the NSA and CIA, this stuff was going on right under their nose, and they let it happen. They let the Chinese steal our technology with impunity. And now Donald Trump is saying, no more, no more. That's so important. And you have to tell your friends about this, because nobody covered this story. You can read about it at WeThePeopleConvention.org. Just look at it. The story's there, and show it to people, and forward the link, the URL to people in emails, and show them what's going on. So another thing, that Trump is doing that's just amazing is he's come up with a peace plan. All right. Now, you probably didn't hear this. Donald Trump this week announced a plan to bring peace between Israel and the Palestinians. Now, listen, you and I have been around. We've heard every peace plan. What's the problem? Why don't they ever work? Because the Palestinians don't want peace. They don't want peace. They are surrogates of the mullahs in Iran. Palestine has Hamas, a terrorist organization, as their government. They pay people to do suicide bombings to kill Israelis. So they don't really want peace. And Trump knows that. So what's different about this deal is that Trump is kind of taking a page out of the playbook from North Korea. Remember when he painted the picture from Kim in North Korea about how North Korea could be this prosperous country with beautiful cities and all kinds of industry. If you just give up your nuclear weapons, you can have a great country and not worried about us having to kill you, okay? So here's what he's doing with Palestine in this thing. First of all, the White House in this deal gave Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu a green light to immediately annex about 30% of the West Bank, a step every previous U.S. administration vehemently opposed. Netanyahu plans to act on that opportunity as soon as this Sunday. If Israel does annex the Jordan Valley, it will entrench Israelis' control and fundamentally change the equation for any other future negotiations. So basically what Trump is doing is he's basically taking away the hope that Israel's ever going to be driven out of there. He's going to give them this valley, which is critical to their defense. And once they have control of this, then it's real clear. Palestinians, the Israelis aren't going anywhere. So now you only have one option, and that's peace. So now what Trump does is he turns around and he says, I'm telling you that if you choose peace, we'll let you have your capital in a part of Jerusalem, right? Israel will share Jerusalem. We will give you land that will be your state, and we will have companies and billions of dollars investment come in to Palestine to create jobs for your people so they can be as wealthy as the Israelis. See what he's doing? This is a play to hurt Iran. It's all connected. But he can make this play because we have energy independence. The Middle East isn't something that holds us hostage anymore. See, they would always say, we'll cut off your oil supplies if you don't turn over Israel. Now we can say, go pound sand, because we don't need your freaking oil. We've got our oil. We've got our gas because of fracking, because of our pipelines, because of the drilling regulations that Trump has removed, okay, that opened up our energy sector. And that's why it's a national security thing. And that's why Trump has got the ability to make this play on Palestine and basically tell those people, listen, you either can keep dying for nothing because you ain't never getting Israel now. They're going to be entrenched once they make this move into this valley, or you can have peace and prosperity. You pick. Yeah. What's your answer to that besides the point of a gun from the mullahs, right? What's your answer to that? So anyway, let me close the podcast today with a story that I just love. I want to end on a good note, and this is a good thing, okay? the Buckeye Institute here in Ohio is just a great organization that we support. They support us. We work together on things. And they had a release this week that's really good. The Buckeye Institute's tireless efforts to increase job opportunities for Ohio military families culminated in the passage of Senate Bill 7, which Ohio Governor Mike DeWine signed into law at a ceremony at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base on Monday afternoon. Senate Bill 7 grants the spouses of active duty military men and women who are relocated to Ohio's reciprocity for their valid out-of-state occupational licenses, allowing them to continue working in their chosen profession. Okay, so what does that mean? Okay, well, let me give you an actual story. Senate Bill 7 is a victory for Melonia Lilly, a registered nurse who has served this country alongside her active duty Marine Corps husband as a military spouse since 2008. Lilly said, Senate Bill 7 is such good news for military families like mine. Since 2008, I have moved 4 times as a military spouse, and each time I had to pay for licensing fees and fees for background checks and getting fingerprinted before I could work. It is such a relief to know that Ohio recognizes the challenges military spouses face and has taken the Buckeye Institute's recommendations to remove an unnecessary bureaucratic rule that made it harder and more expensive for military spouses like me to get back to work. So basically, what does this mean? It means, listen, you're in the military, you come here as a nurse, you come here with some other, credentials, maybe you're a certified public accountant, I don't know what credentials you could have. And all you got to say is, I'm a military spouse. And we say, okay, you already have your credentials in Ohio, go work. Instead of you show up, your husband's been transferred, he's gone, or your wife's been transferred, they're serving duty, you're trying to work to help take care of the family, and you can't work because you got to go get re-registered. You got to pay fees, you got to get fingerprinted, you got to do a background check. Background check, they're in the military. I think they've been background checked. Love the Buckeye Institute. Love what they did here. Love what they did for these military families who already sacrificed so much to serve our country. It's the least we could do to allow them to come to Ohio and just work in the area that they're certified to work in. Great job, Buckeye Institute. We really appreciate it. All right, so that's it for the podcast this week. We really appreciate you listening. And it's really important that you tell other people about this podcast and radio show. I mean, it's real simple. As we get close to the election, we're going to be using this for command and control. We're going to use this to organize our volunteers and our grassroots people to make calls, to knock on doors, to put up signs, to do the things we need to do to protect our individual freedom and liberty. So we want to build this audience. And I can tell you by looking at some of the ratings and some of the viewership that we grew, we've only been on for 1 month, and we've probably grown 30% this month, but we need to keep growing. And the only way that happens is if you tell other people about it. I also need you to send me comments. Write to me at info@wethepeopleconvention.org, info@wethepeopleconvention.org, and say, hey, Tom, I'd like you to cover this topic, or I really like, the way you've been covering the refugee issue in Ohio, or I really like, the information you're giving us about how we can register to vote, or, whatever is on your mind. This show has to work for you. I'm not doing this for my health, okay? I'm doing this because we needed this information channel because we knew that we were going to be censored on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter, and we are. We are. So we decided, and the people at the We the People convention, our members raised $80,000 to buy the airtime so we could have this radio show and this podcast so we could talk to each other and organize our forces and not be censored. And I need you to go to wethepeopleconvention.org and click on the donate button. And most of all, I really need you to donate like $5 per month because I need cash flow, right? Any business needs cash flow. If you just give me a one-time donation, I got to keep going out and raising that money every month to keep us going. And we've got a lot of things we're going to try to do this month, or this year, to help make sure Donald Trump gets reelected. So even use the program I told you about at the beginning of the show. You can text us at 22525, 22525. Text the word freedom. Text freedom to 22525. And a thing will come up on your phone, and you can donate $5 a month, $60 a year, to help keep our organization growing and getting stronger so we have a seat at the table for this election and for what comes after Donald Trump. That's a fact, folks. We better get bigger and stronger if we're going to have a seat at the table for what comes after Trump, because that day's coming, hopefully not this year, but certainly 4 years down the road. And right now, we're not big enough to have a say in what happens. And unless we get lots of members and we raise lots of money, we're not going to have a seat at that table. So tell other people about this podcast and radio show. Go to wethepeopleconvention.org, click on the orange button. It'll show you what radio stations we're on. It'll tell you how to get us on Roku, on Amazon Fire, on your TV, how to watch it on YouTube. You can watch the show 24/7, 365 on your phone, on your computer, on your iPad, on your TV. Okay, can't make it any easier, but you got to make a point to watch it every week, whether you listen on the radio or you get the podcast. Okay, so that's our pitch. That's why we do this show. I hope you like the show. I hope you get information that you don't get anywhere else on this show. And, I sure appreciate you telling other people about it. You have a good week. We'll be back talking to you next week. Have a good time. Bye-bye.